Welcome to our monthly angel connection, where each month we focus on one angelic force that governs the energy of the month and the zodiac sign associated with it. The purpose is not simply to learn about the angel, but to understand the specific spiritual frequency it represents, so we can consciously connect to the specific energy and activate it in our daily lives. In Kabbalistic teachings, angels are not beings with wings. They are frequencies of light, intelligent currents of consciousness that carry specific functions within creation. Each angel represents a particular spiritual force that influences our reality. One of these elevated forces is Angel Tariel, who governs the lunar month of Cancer, Tammuz. The unique gift of Angel Tariel is helping us remove one of the greatest illusions of human consciousness: the belief that our fulfillment, energy, validation, and blessings come from other people or external circumstances. Tariel helps us remember that the Creator alone is the source of all light, while people, relationships, opportunities, and situations are merely channels through which that light flows. These teachings becomes especially important during the month of Cancer. Cancer is deeply connected to emotional connection, belonging, nurturing, family, love, and security. These are beautiful qualities, but every gift contains a challenge. The challenge of Cancer consciousness is attachment, the tendency to believe my happiness comes from them, my love comes from them, my security comes from them, my approval comes from them, my fulfillment comes from them. And the moment we believe that, fear enters. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of loss, fear of disapproval, fear that if this person changes, leaves, disagrees, or stops giving us what we've been receiving, our light will disappear. Angel Tariel comes to remove this illusion, and to understand how, we first need to understand the original transaction that exists within creation itself. When we talk about buying and selling, giving and receiving, we are really talking about a spiritual principle that existed long before business, relationships, or communication. The original transaction is between light and vessel. The Creator, the infinite force of sharing, created the vessel, the infinite desire to receive. The light shares, the vessel receives. The light gives, the vessel enjoys. A transaction takes place. An exchange of energy occurs. This is the original circuitry of creation. Everything we experience in our lives is a reflection of this spiritual structure. In business, we call it seller and buyer. In relationships, we call it giving and receiving. In communication, we call it expressing and listening. In leadership, we call it influencing and being influenced. The language changes, but the spiritual structure remains the same. We are all selling something throughout the day. Something we're selling, a product or energy. Sometimes we're selling an idea. Sometimes we're selling a vision. Sometimes we're trying to inspire change. Sometimes we're trying to help someone grow. Sometimes we're simply trying to communicate a truth we believe can help another person. And we are all buying throughout the day as well. We receive ideas, we accept guidance, we appreciate support, we allow ourselves to be influenced. We choose whether to receive what another person is offering. This dynamic exists in business, marriage, parenting, friendships, teaching, leadership, and virtually every human interaction. The challenge begins when a transaction takes place and we experience energy as a result. Someone buys from us, someone agrees with us, someone appreciating us, someone validates us, someone follows our lead, someone receives what we're offering. And because we feel energized, we begin to assume that the other person generated the energy. This is where the illusion begins. We start believing that the buyer is the source, the receiver is the source, the audience is the source, the client is the source, the spouse is the source, the child is the source. The person becomes the source of what we're feeling. And this is precisely the illusion Angel Tariel comes to remove. Because the person may be the channel through which the experience arrived, but they are not the source of it. Think about a faucet. Water comes through the faucet, but the faucet doesn't create the water. It is simply the channel through which the water flows. Yet this is exactly what we do with people. We experience love through them, support through them, opportunity through them, validation through them. And then we began treating the channel as though it created the blessing. When the channel changes, we panic. When the relationship shifts, we panic. When the opportunity disappears, we panic. Not because the source disappeared, but because we forgot where the source actually was. Tariel reminds us, people are channels, relationships are channels, businesses are channels, clients are channels, children are channels, spouses are channels, opportunities are channels. The Creator is the source. And the moment we remember this, something profound changes inside us, because we stop looking at people as the origin of our fulfillment and begin seeing them as vehicles through which the Creator's light may flow. This understanding becomes especially important when we begin looking at communication, relationships, and influence. This understanding changes everything, especially communication. Much of the suffering we experience in communication comes from believing that our fulfillment depends on another person's response. We need them to agree. We need them to understand. We need them to appreciate. We need them to validate. We need them to receive what we're offering. And because our fulfillment becomes tied to their response, communication becomes loaded with pressure. We become reactive, defensive, controlling, fearful, attached. But the moment we remember that the Creator is the source and the other person is merely a channel, something shifts. We can express ourselves without attachment. We can make requests without desperation. We can communicate our needs without fear. We can hear no without collapsing. We can love without clinging. We can give without controlling. We can receive without becoming dependent. Because while blessings may come through many channels, they all originate from the same source. This is one of the great gifts of Angel Tariel. Tariel helps us participate fully in relationships, businesses, communication, and this itself without confusing the channel with the source. Let's go deeper. There are times in life when we are the receiver, and there are times when we are the giver. When you're trying to convince someone of something you believe, let's say, can help them, you're the seller. When you're trying to inspire change, you're the seller. When you are sharing a vision, you're the seller. When you're teaching, coaching, leading, or guiding, you're the seller. You're hoping it will be received. The challenge begins when there is only a seller and no apparent buyer. You share, you give, you invest energy, you make effort, you offer something meaningful, and nobody seems interested. Nobody seems receptive. Nobody appears to be receiving. These moments can be incredibly painful, especially when our intentions are good. When we genuinely believe we are trying to help, to elevate, to heal, to improve, to bring light. Naturally, we want what we're offering to be received. We want the transaction to happen. We want the circuitry to be completed. But what happens when it doesn't? This question brings us to one of the deepest teachings connected to Angel Tariel. Most people lose energy in these moments. They become discouraged, frustrated, resentful, disappointed. Why? Because unconsciously, they have connected their fulfillment to the response of the other person. The appreciation became the source. The recognition became the source. The cooperation became the source. The buyer became the source. And when the response doesn't come, they feel empty. But Tariel challenges that perception. The buyer was never the source. The appreciation was never the source. The recognition was never the source. The source was always the light of the Creator. The transaction may or may not take place. The person may or may not be ready. The vessel may or may not be open. But the source remains unchanged. And this becomes one of the great spiritual tests, specifically for the zodiac sign of Cancer, but it's Cancer consciousness. Can I continue being a channel of light when the person in front of me isn't receiving? Can I continue sharing when I'm not being appreciated? Can I continue giving when I'm not getting recognition? Can I continue bringing light without becoming dependent on how it is received? If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Book now with me one-to-one session in angel coaching and communication coaching. To learn more, email or DM me. Enjoy the video. Received. Because the moment my fulfillment depends on whether someone buys what I'm selling, I have made the buyer my source. The moment my happiness depends on appreciation, I have made another person my source. The moment my certainty depends on another person's response, I have confused the channel with the source. And that is exactly the illusion Angel Tariel comes to remove. Rav Ashlag teaches something revolutionary about desire. Most people think desire comes first. They think, first I want something, then I go looking for fulfillment. But Kabbalah teaches the opposite. To understand this, we return to the origin of creation. What came first, the vessel or the light? The desire to receive or the desire to give? The answer is the light. The Creator's desire to share preceded the vessel's desire to receive. The light created the vessel. The desire to give created the desire to receive. This changes everything, because if the light comes first, then fulfillment precedes desire. The possibility precedes the longing. The sharing precedes the receiving. The cause precedes the effect. This is why Rav Berg would often ask a deeper question. Whenever someone felt a strong desire, where did that desire come from? Most people assume I desire it, therefore I seek it. But according to Rav Ashlag, the desire itself may be evidence that the light has already touched your consciousness. The possibility came first. The light came first. The spark came first. And that spark awakened the desire. This is why when someone says, I have a dream, I have a vision, I feel called toward something, I feel drawn toward a certain purpose, I pay attention. Of course, not every impulse, not every craving, not every momentary excitement, but those deeper desires that continue calling to us, those desires connected to growth, purpose, sharing, transformation, many times they are evidence that the light has already arrived before the vessel became aware of it. The dream did not begin with the dreamer. The light behind the dream awakened the dreamer. The possibility awakened the desire to manifest it. This became a revolutionary way of understanding life, because most people spend their lives chasing fulfillment. But what if the reason you desire something is because the light behind it is already seeking expression through you? What if the desire itself is evidence that the possibility already exists? What if the light got there first? This doesn't mean every desire is meant to be pursued. This brings us to one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves. How do we know if a desire comes from the soul or from the ego? Because not every desire comes from the same place. Not every desire reflects our next level. Not every desire is meant to be pursued. Some desires emerge from the soul's correction and purpose. Others emerge from fear, insecurity, comparison, instant gratification, or what we call the klipot, the negative side. So how do we know the difference? The answer begins with honesty. Not honesty with other people, honesty with ourselves. A genuine desire to connect to the light. A genuine desire to know the truth. A genuine desire to receive what belongs to our soul. This is where restriction becomes essential. Pause, wait. Don't immediately react. Don't immediately buy. Don't immediately pursue. Don't immediately decide. Create space and ask, Creator, I don't simply want what I want. I want what belongs to me. I want what serves my correction. I want what serves my purpose. I want what you want to reveal through me. This is a very different prayer. Most people spend their lives asking, how do I get what I want? The soul asks, what truly belongs to me? What the light wants to reveal itself, what kind of light wants to reveal itself through me? Imagine you buying a shirt. You see it, you want it, you feel excitement. Before acting, pause and ask yourself, is this a true desire, or is it simply a temporary impulse? Will I still feel connected to it tomorrow? Will I still feel connected to it after restriction? Restriction creates clarity. Sometimes a desire disappears. Sometimes it becomes stronger. And that distinction is important. The same principle applies when buying a house. The same principle applies to career decisions. The same principle applies to relationships. The same principle applies to soulmate connections. The question shifts from, do I want this, to, does this want to be revealed through me? Those are two very different questions. One comes from lack, the other comes from partnership with the light. The fact that you are aware of a desire is important. The fact that you can feel the pull is important, because the awareness itself may be evidence that the light has already moved first. But awareness alone is not enough. We also need honesty, and we need willingness, the willingness to walk away. There is another essential test. Can I genuinely say, if it's not mine, it's okay? Not intellectually, not spiritually, emotionally. Can I truly let it go if it isn't aligned with my soul? Many times we say, if it's not mine, it's okay, but secretly we've already decided. Secretly we're attached. Secretly we've chosen the outcome. The real question is, am I willing to walk away? Am I willing to release it if it isn't truly mine? Because between these two intentions, the sincere desire to connect only to the light and the genuine willingness to walk away, something powerful happens. We stop forcing, we stop chasing, we stop manufacturing outcomes, and we create space for the light to reveal what actually belongs to us. This is one of the great gifts of Angel Tariel. Tariel helps us move beyond attachment, beyond emotional dependency, beyond ego-driven desire, and return to certainty. The certainty that what belongs to our soul cannot be taken away from us. Now, going deeper, we're going to look at Rav Ashleg's teaching. He explains something profound. The desire to give of the light is the cause. The desire to receive of the vessel is the effect. The light is the cause, the vessel is the effect. The giver is the cause, the receiver is the effect, which means we should never forget the cause influences the effect. The light influences the vessel, not the other way around. Now, compare this to how most of the world thinks. Suppose someone wants to start a business. What are they usually taught? Research the market. Find out what people want. Find out what sells. Find out what buyers are looking for. In other words, find out what the vessel wants. Then shape yourself around that desire. There is practical wisdom in understanding people's needs, but spiritually, something important can be lost. If I become completely controlled by what the market wants, then the buyer becomes the cause and I become the effect. The vessel begins governing the light. The receiver begins governing the giver. And according to Rav Ashlag, that is backwards. The light comes first. The sharing comes first. The desire to receive follows. This becomes one of the deepest teaching of Angel Tariel. Cancer consciousness often causes us to look outside ourselves. What do they want? What do they think? What will make them approve of me? What will make them choose me? What will make them love me? What will make them buy from me? But Tariel reminds us, the source is not the receiver. The source is the light. When we reconnect to the light as the cause, we stop living reactively to everyone else's desires and begin aligning ourselves with what the Creator wants to reveal through us. A beautiful example of this comes from the Kabbalah Center. Our teachers and founders of the Kabbalah Center, Rav and Karen Berg, received the merit of continuing the mission of Rav Ashlag and Rav Brandwein to spread Kabbalah throughout the world. Think about the market at that time. Most people weren't looking for Kabbalah. Talk about 70s, yeah? Most people had never heard of it. There was no obvious demand, no large audience, no established market. If they had followed conventional thinking, they might have concluded, nobody wants this, nobody is asking for this, the market isn't interested. But they understood something deeper. They understood that if the light is real, the vessel will eventually appear. Their responsibility was to share, to reveal, to persist, to bring light. And personally, I had the merit of being at the Kabbalah Center during the early years, in the early 90s, and many of us literally knocked on doors spoke to strangers, invited people, shared, explained, connected, and many times people rejected us. Doors were slammed in our faces. People weren't interested. People dismissed the message before hearing it. Now, from a conventional perspective, it would have been easy to conclude there is no market, there is no buyer, there is no vessel, but that wasn't the lesson. The lesson was learning how to stay connected to the light, even when the vessel wasn't yet visible. The lesson was learning how to continue sharing before seeing results. The lesson was learning that the cause comes before the effect. The light comes before the vessel. The sharing comes before the receiving. And the Rav would often remind us, if you have a true desire to share, somebody wants to receive. That consciousness changed everything, because whenever I truly connected to the desire to give, something always shifted. Unexpected people would appear, unexpected conversations would happen. Someone would say, I've been looking for this, I've been searching for this wisdom. Where have you been all those years? Why? Because when we stop obsessing over finding the vessel and focus on becoming the light, the spiritual circuitry begins to form naturally. This doesn't mean we stop making effort. We still market, we still communicate, we still build, we still make action. But our consciousness remains connected to the cause, not the effect. To the light, not the reaction. To the sharing, not the approval. And that changes everything. One of the most practical applications of Angel Tariel's teaching appears in the area of influence. Whether in business, parenting, relationships, communication, leadership, coaching, or dating, we are constantly trying to influence people. We're trying to share something, a perspective, an idea, a solution, a truth, a possibility. And many times we genuinely believe what our sharing can help. The challenge begins when our fulfillment becomes dependent on whether the other person receives it. The moment that happens, we lose our position as the cause. We become reactive. We become attached. We become desperate. And people feel it. Think about how it feels when someone is trying desperately to sell you something, and you feel and see their happiness depends on whether you buy or not. Their confidence depends on whether you say yes. Their emotional state depends on your response. Most people instinctively pull away from that energy. Why? Because the seller has unconsciously become the vessel. Instead of sharing value, they're seeking fulfillment. Instead of giving, they're trying to receive. Instead of being the cause, they've become dependent on the effect. And people feel that immediately. A true seller believes they are bringing value. A true seller believes they have something meaningful to offer. A true seller wants the buyer to benefit, but they do not need the buyer in order to feel whole. That difference changes everything. And this applies far beyond business. Imagine you're trying to help your child. You see something clearly. You know a change would benefit them. You share, you guide, you explain, and they don't listen. What often happens, we become reactive, we become frustrated. We begin demanding. Why aren't you listening to me? I know what's best for you. You need to hear me. In that moment, something important has happened. We stop being the seller. We stop being the giver. We stopped being the cause. Now, we need something from them. We need them to listen. We need them to agree. We need them to change. And the moment we need that, we have become the vessel. The same thing happens with friends. We see a pattern that's hurting them. We want to help. We want to wake them up. We want to support them. But when they don't change, we become upset. Why? Because our fulfillment became dependent on their response. The real question isn't, are they changing? The real question is, do I truly want to share the light of change? Or do I need them to change so I can feel okay? Those are very different motivations. If I truly want to share the light of change, I can continue sharing. I can pray. I can love. I can support. I can communicate. I can remain available. But if I do not become emotionally dependent on the outcome, because the moment I become dependent on the outcome, I have made them my source. And that is exactly the illusion Tariel comes to remove. This principle explains why so many conversations become painful. We think we're communicating, but often we're trying to secure fulfillment. We need the other person to understand us. We need them to validate us. We need them to agree. We need them to acknowledge our perspective. And because we need something from them, pressure enters the conversation. The other person feels it. Communication becomes heavier. Defensiveness increases, resistance increases, connection decreases. But when I remember that the Creator is the source, I can communicate differently. I can express myself honestly. I can make requests. I can share my feelings. I can communicate my needs. But my emotional well-being does not depend on whether the other person responds exactly as I hoped. I remain connected to the source, not the channel. This principle is equally important in dating. Many people spend enormous amount of energy trying to sell themselves, trying to impress, trying to perform, trying to become what they think the other person wants, trying to guarantee that they will be chosen. But a true seller is not desperate to be bought. A true seller does not manipulate in order to be chosen. A true seller simply stands in the value of what they are offering. The same is true in relationships. The goal is not to convince someone to choose you. The goal is to reveal who you truly are. You do not want just any buyer. You want the right buyer. You do not want just any partner. You want the right partner. You do not want someone who chose a performance. You want someone who can receive the real you. Because if someone falls in love with a version of you that you manufactured to gain approval, they haven't actually connected to you. They connected to the performance. Real connection happens when the light meets the right vessel. When there is genuine alignment. When there is recognition without manipulation. When there is receiving without pressure. This is true dating. This is true communication. This is true business. This is true sharing. Every one of us will be tested through rejection. Sometimes the test comes through silence, sometimes through closed doors, sometimes through people not understanding us, sometimes through opportunities that don't work out, sometimes through people refusing what we're offering. In those moments, we have a choice. We can become reactive, or we can remain connected to the consciousness of the cause. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean stopping our efforts. It means remembering where the source is. The source is not the response. The source is not the approval. The source is not the buyer. The source is not the audience. The source is not the person we're trying to help. The source is the Creator. And because the Creator is the source, I can continue sharing even when I don't yet see results. I can continue giving even when appreciation is absent. I can continue bringing light even when the vessel is not immediately visible. Because I trust that if the desire to share is genuine, the right vessel will eventually appear. Not necessarily according to my expectations, not necessarily according to my timeline, not necessarily through the person I originally imagined, but the circuitry will eventually be completed. The light will find its vessel. And that certainty allows us to remain the cause instead of becoming the effect. One final caution is many people understand this principle in business. They persevere, they keep showing up, they continue building despite rejection, but then they go home and become reactive with their spouse, reactive with their children, reactive with their friends, reactive with their employees. They understand being the light in business, but not so much in life. Angel Tariel teaches that being the seller is not a business strategy. It is a state of consciousness. Being the cause is not something we do only when selling a product. It is who we become with our spouse, with our children, with our friends, with our students, with our employees, with strangers everywhere. The question is not, am I being the light in my business? The question is, am I being the light in my life? Because the true seller is simply a person who remains connected to the source and refuses to make other people responsible for their fulfillment. And that is one of the deepest gifts Angel Tariel offers us, specifically during the month of Cancer. There is one more dimension to this teaching that is important to understand. It's easy to say, trust the light, be the cause, don't become attached, but that doesn't mean we stop taking action. Surrender is not passivity. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is not avoiding effort. Surrender means remaining a channel of the light while allowing the Creator to determine the outcome. For example, imagine you are selling a house. Of course you market the house. Of course you show the house. Of course you negotiate. Of course you make very practical effort, but your consciousness changes. Instead of asking, how do I get any buyer? You begin asking, Creator, help me attract the right buyer. The buyer who truly belongs with this home. The buyer who can receive the light within it. The buyer who can complete the proper circuitry. Because Kabbalah teaches us to think beyond the immediate transaction. Most people think, I sold the house, I got paid, the transaction is over. But is it? What if the buyer was completely wrong for the property? What if years later they are miserable? What if resentment, disappointment, and negativity continue flowing through that transaction? Kabbalah teaches us that transactions create energetic connections. The money is only one moment in the circuitry. The deeper question is, was the transaction aligned? Was it beneficial for everyone involved? Was light revealed through it? Because the ultimate goal is not simply receiving. The ultimate goal is revealing light. This applies to houses, business, relationships, partnerships, friendships, everything. A true transaction is one in which the right light meets the right vessel. Part of maintaining healthy spiritual circuitry is remembering that blessings are meant to continue flowing. The purpose of receiving is not merely to receive. The purpose is to become a channel, to elevate, to share, to reveal more light. This is one of the spiritual principles behind tithing and sharing. When blessings come into our lives, we continue the flow. We don't become the final destination. We become a channel. Because energy that continues flowing remains alive. And this brings us back to Angel Tariel. Tariel reminds us that every true transaction begins with the light. The Creator is the source. The light is the cause. We are channels through which that light can flow. And when we remain connected to that consciousness, we stop chasing transactions and begin creating the conditions for genuine spiritual circuitry. So take a few moments now to reflect honesty. Question number 1, where in my life right now am I too dependent on the buyer? Where am I dependent on someone appreciating me, understanding me, agreeing with me, receiving me, buying from me, validating me, choosing me, changing because of me? Where have I unconsciously made another person the source of my fulfillment? Question 2, where have I lost contact with the true seller within me? A true seller is a giver. A true seller is a cause. A true seller does not become overly dependent on the response of the buyer. Where have I become reactive instead of remaining connected to the light? And the third question, what would change in my life if I truly remembered that the Creator is the source and everything else is a channel? We'll take a few moments now to write, reflect deeply, because this teaching applies to every area of life. Business, parenting, marriage, friendships, leadership, teaching, dating, communication, and our relationship with the Creator, of course. And now let's move from understanding this teaching intellectually to experiencing it directly. Please sit very comfortable. Allow yourself to relax. You can look above eye vision and slowly close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently exhale. And Just allow yourself to be in the here and now. Again, inhale deeply and exhale slowly. With every breath, allow yourself to become more present, more centered, more connected. As you breathe in, feel yourself receiving the light. As you breathe out, feel yourself sharing the light. Receiving, sharing. Vessel, light. Continuous flow, continuous circuitry. Now bring to your awareness to one area of your life where you are trying to create movement. A relationship, a business, a child, a partner, a project, a dream, a conversation, a situation where you deeply want to share something meaningful. Notice honestly, have you become dependent on the response? Have you become dependent on whether they understand, whether they receive, whether they appreciate, whether they choose? Simply notice without judgment, without criticism, just awareness. Now invite the energy of Angel Tariel into this situation. See yourself surrounded by a beautiful light, a light of certainty, a light of trust, a light that reconnects you to the true source. Feel that light filling your heart, filling your mind, filling your soul. And now silently repeat, the Creator is my source. People are channels. Opportunities are channels. Relationships are channels. The Creator is my source. I release my attachment to the buyer. I release my attachment to the response. I release my attachment to the outcome. I am willing to make the effort. I am willing to take action. I am willing to share. But I do not need to force the result. I trust the light. I trust the timing. I trust the process. I trust that what belongs to my soul cannot be taken away from me. I imagine the right receiver, not necessarily the person you expected, not necessarily according to your timetable, but the true receiver, the true vessel. See them naturally receiving what you have to offer, without pressure, without persuasion, without force, simply because the circuitry is correct. The light has met its vessel. The cause has met its effect. The transaction is complete. Feel the peace that comes from knowing you do not have to force what belongs to you. Feel the certainty that the Creator is the source. Feel the trust that Angel Tariel is helping you release attachment to channels and reconnect to the source of all light. Take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Again, inhale deep and exhale. Whenever you're ready, you can gently open your eyes, feeling lighter, feeling calmer, feeling more certain, feeling more connected, knowing that you are a channel of the light, knowing that the Creator is the source, knowing that your role is to remain the cause. Make your effort and trust the light to reveal the right vessel at the right time. And so it is.